Hello house lovers, it is another glorious summer's afternoon here in Melbourne in the lovely Bonaccord house. We are about to go into another 5-day hard lockdown in Melbourne, so it is time to smell the roses. And perhaps not literally smell, and perhaps not literally roses, but ceiling roses. I am in what is going to be our guest suite, which as you can see is fabulous. Well, it's not, but it will be. And I'm going to start taking bookings any minute. And if we pan up, this, house lovers, is the only original ceiling left in the house. And that is the only original ceiling rose. It's got a wonderful sort of robust William IV feel about it. So it's that design period is when the Georgian period sort of started to morph into the Victorian period, and so things were getting a bit more decorative, but a bit fuller, a bit more butch, and less florid before the whole floridity and over-embellishment of the Victorian era took hold. And the lovely Bonaccord house was built in 1874, so those roses were perhaps a little bit old-fashioned for that period. But anyway, what's fashion and trend got to do with it when it's really all about ceiling love? But it now does bring up the question of what to do up here. Now this is going to be our reception room that is going to stretch the whole width of the house with these beautiful windows. There's 5 windows going across the front. I'll show you the view from the outside so you can see how wonderful it's going to be. We're getting to some specification details, and this ceiling is a replacement. It's floating below the old lath and plaster ceiling, and that ceiling rose is a sort of a 1960s, 1970s pretty generic reproduction of a late Victorian ceiling rose. And so the million-dollar question in this big room, which is going to be the amalgamation of 2 larger rooms and a smaller one, the ceilings are all irregular and they've been lowered and replaced. We're going to even out those ceilings with a new one, which means having to replace or position new ceiling roses. Million-dollar question, house lovers. Do we, A, go with a cast and a reinterpretation of the original ceiling rose that's downstairs and just do the same thing, or do we do something a little different? Enter stage left my dear friend Simon Leah, who, and this is the collective unconscious going crazy, happens to have been producing a prototype range of, I guess you'd call them postmodern but traditional ceiling roses. They are stunning. I went to go and have a look and do a studio visit. Come along with me and see how fabulous they are. House lovers, here I am at the fabulous Simon Leah's studio. Simon is... What are you? What are you? How would you describe yourself?
I'd say after many years I would probably say I'm a decorative artist.
A decorative artist. This is the original ceiling rose, the only original one in our house, and when I was looking at it, you immediately popped into mind because you had, the collective unconscious, started to work on prototypes of sort of modernist but traditional ceiling roses.
Indeed, this is true.
Do you have something behind you?
I do.
An acanthus leaf.
Indeed. So I too was inspired by ceiling roses of the Victorian era.
Yes.
And using the existing leaves that I was using in my wall hangings and mirrors.
Yep. Which I'll come around and show you.
Thought that perhaps they lend themselves well to something decorative and ceiling mounted.
And this piece here is bronze, or is this copper?
This is actually copper,
yes,
but the actual work is in bronze, which is a little harder to work with. It's still shim, more colour variation.
And what I've seen, which we'll show in a minute, is that you can achieve all manner of colour finishes on the outside, whether it's colour or patination.
Indeed, so we could go with a flat powder-coated finish,
yes,
a raw antiqued finish,
raw antique,
or any natural aging process,
yep,
or something that's gently encouraged with chemicals.
Aha! So you have been experimenting chemically.
Stop it.
Mr. Leah, shall we say. So your aim with this is to produce something that people can actually buy. So it's not a one-off commission based, it's going to be a product. Still artisanally made by you.
I love making the work I make, but
yep,
generally I finish something and I never want to look at it again. As you'll see, I end up having to look at some of them for some time. But with the ceiling roses, yes, it's smaller scale, it's at a different price point, and it's not reliant on people having wall space.
Yeah.
So it's a piece of art for the ceiling.
Yeah. I'll put the link to Simon's Instagram below because you can see everything that he's doing And so exciting. Well, what we might do, Mr. Leah, is have a little look at some of the other things you've worked on, which gives an idea of the way that you work with metal.
Of course.
Let's go and have a look. So Simon, the thing that I loved and which struck me immediately when I saw these workings that you were posting on Instagram was that it really does echo this acanthus leaf. It's extraordinary.
Yes, it probably won't have the density that the plasterwork has.
No, which I wouldn't want. Otherwise you'd do a plaster one.
Well, exactly. The two forms which these will attach to sort of fit snugly within each other, and then the acanthus leaves will be fixed at 2 points all the way around. So there'll be 9 leaves per ceiling rose.
Perfect. Now, Simon, this was the first thing that I think I saw that you posted. Is that right? In terms of your working with this kind of form of metal sculpture, patinated finish in an object. Is that right?
It's a little bit later. The one here is actually an earlier work, and there's another that predates that one, which was a commission for a wall hanging. So after I had been making wall hangings, they needed to maybe have some function. Wall hangings are beautiful, but you can't.
They just hang.
They do. So introducing the mirror forms into them, and there's something quite kinetic about this one. It bounces in a breeze. So if it were in a tight hallway, I think it might drive you crazy. But personally, I like the way it flutters, and I always imagine this piece to be at the end of a long hallway.
Now, each of these colours looks very different. So did you treat each of these elements differently to experiment with the kind of finish and colour you were going to get?
Look, the experimentation was perhaps not as wild as it has been.
Not late nights in the acid bath. Woo, baby!
No, it was. And there's nothing here that has been flamed, for example.
Oh.
There's been no.
But you do flame.
I do.
If people ask nicely.
There are a mix of, there's copper, there's brass, there's bronze. They generally have been treated in the same way. Something like here, which needs a good dust. This is liver of sulphur, which has turned it black.
Liver of sulphur.
Liver of sulphur. Sounds scary, is scary.
You're like an alchemist, Mr. Leah.
A little bit.
But I would imagine, though, each metal is going to respond differently to the same chemical input.
They can. Some will react very quickly. Others might take a little bit more time. More recently, I've been using vinegar, white vinegar vapor, to create that oxidizing effect.
Wow.
It can take a day. It can take a week to get the depth of color that I'm after.
Wow. And how did you learn all this? Was this just trial and error, or have you always been interested in chemicals?
I've got a metal worker who works next door. He's been very, very helpful. That's Tom.
Because it also seems quite traditional, like a traditional skill from maybe the 18th century and earlier in terms of metalworking and metal finishing.
Excuse the pun, but I've barely scratched the surface of what can be achieved here. And I think anyone who'd been perhaps working in the industry for decades would look at this and maybe consider it to be quite amateurish and clumsy. I'm very happy with the results I generally get.
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Well, I'm looking forward to, hopefully, we can collaborate on some postmodern, post-colonial, post-industrial ceiling rose.
That would be great.
Using acanthus leaves and liver of
sulphur.
Liver of sulphur. There you are. Aren't they fabulous? And can't you imagine them here at Bonnecourt House? He has a variety of metals and of finishes. It's just stunning, and such an easy mechanism to keep them in place. I am very much looking forward to showing those to the good doctor and Julia. We'll see if we can get the official seal of approval. But there you go. I'll put Simon's Instagram link below so you can see the other things that he's done, which are fabulous as well. And he's hoping to actually create a range of these ceiling roses in, I think, about 10 different colors. So you might want to follow him on Insta and watch that space. But in the meantime, thank you for watching this. Thank you for subscribing and liking and leaving a comment, asking a question that you know I won't be able to answer because, house lovers, I am an amateur struggling my way through the minefield of design, renovation, council approval, but that's a hurdle we've semi-crossed. Anyway, I will do my best. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you next week, lockdown permitting, and we have another special guest who's giving another insight into a tricky restoration moment that includes the doors. Watch this space and I'll see you next week.